Hey guys. Just gonna give it a minute, wait for some people to hop on. Welcome. All right, I'm gonna play my singing bowl while we wait. Welcome. If you're tuning in on YouTube, let me know where you're watching from. Let me know your name. Hmm. That's weird. Okay. Is there anybody there? I see that there's people in the live stream. How are you guys feeling today? It's awfully quiet. Welcome. Thank you for asking. I am resetting. Hi, Carla, watching from Brooklyn. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to continue playing my singing bowl um, as people are joining. We're going to be talking about mindful consumption today. And I personally can use a bit of grounding. So I figure I would play the singing bowl. I'm already effects. So as you're getting comfortable, um, just you can just sit and just listen. You don't have to like meditate or anything. You can just listen, get comfortable, maybe make yourself some tea. I actually didn't have time to make myself some tea, but if you have time to make yourself some tea, do so. And I'm just going to play this for probably like another minute or two, giving people a chance to join. And then we're going to get started with the conversation. Hi, Jewel, watching from Ohio. Welcome. Hmm. Welcome, everybody, into the space. Thank you for being here. So, today we are talking about mindful consumption and what it means to find harmony between spirituality and just living our lives. So, I'll share a little bit of context about how this topic came to mind, and then I will pose a question for you all for us to frame the conversation around. Also, before I get into any of that, though, is this anyone's first time ever joining one of my live conversations? If so, just let me know in the chat if this is your first time. Always forget that, like, this could be your first time. You could not know who I am. So really quickly, I'll introduce myself. I won't be rude. So my name is Fatima, and welcome to my channel. I host these live streams on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today we started a little late because, in all honesty, this almost didn't happen. If I'm being frank, it wasn't about to happen. But I was like, you know what? We got to show up even when we don't feel like it. So, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that today because balancing spirituality and life sometimes look like you showing up when you don't feel like it. And maybe showing up for you doesn't mean showing up in a space like this. Maybe showing up is showing up at your job or showing up in your relationship or showing up with your children. But either way, we all have those moments in life where we have to find that groove and that harmony between showing up, practicing our spirituality, taking care of ourselves, right? Practicing our self care, but also still making time for the people and the relationships in our lives. So, we're going to talk about that. Um, so, yeah, we have these live conversations on Fridays. We talk about a variety of different things related to self care, faith, mental health. Um, Yeah, all of that jazz. So I'm excited to have today's conversation about mindful consumption. And I want to start by asking a question to you. And that question is, how do you practice mindful consumption? And by that, what I mean is, how are you staying mindful of your needs, your self care, your spirituality, while also consuming content, consuming life, right? Consuming the things that are around you, what you watch, what you listen to, what you eat, the people you spend time with. So let me know in the comment section how you practice mindful consumption. Do you practice it? Are you like, I have no idea how to practice it? Let me know what your thoughts are about that. If you don't have an answer to that question, let me know what questions you have about the topic. And as you're doing that, I'll share how this topic came about. So, hi, Zane from New York. Thank you for tuning in. So, this conversation came about because um, Jada, who is my good friend, I'm not sure if she's on this live right now. She's also my social media manager, helping me out with content. Jewel says, I'm still trying to find a balance. She basically asked me the question once. She said, how do you, or she, I think she framed it as like when she was in college, she shared my videos with some of her friends in school. And one of the things that one of her friends mentioned to her was like, um, how does she find balance between being a Christian and living her life, right? And I thought that was interesting. And out of that came the topic of finding balance in life in general, life and spirituality. The topic of mindful consumption was born because I don't think that this just applies to people who identify as Christian. I think that this conversation applies to anyone that is focused on their well-being, focused on their self-growth, self-development, but also trying to balance other things in their lives, right? Because just because we are on a spiritual journey, that doesn't mean that life all of a sudden stops for us and we get like a pass, you know? Like we don't get a pass just because we're on a spiritual journey. We don't get like a, okay, you're on your spiritual journey, so everything else can kind of like pause for a little while just so you can focus on that. It would be great if that happened, but like spiritual journeys are unfolding as we're unfolding through life, right? So unfortunately, that's not the case. We got to figure out how to do both. We have to figure out how to focus on our mental health, focus on our self care, focus on our faith, and focus on relationships, focus on school, focus on work, focus on children if we have them, right? So it's like, it can feel a bit overwhelming. And I want you to let me know in the comment section if you ever feel overwhelmed thinking about those things. Actually, let's use this poll feature. I've never used this before. Do you feel overwhelmed when it comes to finding balance? So I think I just put a poll in the chat. I don't know. I tried to, but if it didn't show up on your end, because I don't see it on my end, let me know. Like, do you ever feel overwhelmed when it comes to finding balance in your life? Okay, I see answers coming in. Yes, yes, I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us do, and I think something that social media doesn't tell us, something that a lot of our favorite influencers who are posting content about wellness and self care don't tell us is that it can feel overwhelming to be on a journey of self development and growth and also trying to navigate all of these things. Like in a previous conversation, we talked about navigating friendships as an adult, right? That's a part of it. Like sometimes when we're in the space of transition and evolving through our spiritual journeys, navigating friendships can be like a whole thing that can create a sense of overwhelm, just like relationships, right? It's like relationships oftentimes, I'm sure you all have probably heard this before, but like relationships act as a mirror. So if a relationship is acting as a mirror, and if it's revealing to you all these things within yourself, about yourself, that can easily get overwhelming very quickly, right? Like it can get overwhelming to feel like, you know, you're I've talked to my friends about this before, and let me know if any of you have ever felt this way before. But it seems like when you're in a healthy relationship, or not even just healthy, I don't want to put that title on it because you could be in an unhealthy relationship and this could be happening too. But relationships oftentimes tend to trigger us, right? Trigger all this childhood stuff, trigger all these core wounds, trigger all these things that we thought we were past, thought we got over. And then you get into a relationship and it's like you realize in small little things, in small little moments, you're being triggered. In small ways, you're being triggered and it's activating like this um emotion in you. And sometimes it's activating like this flight or fight feeling. And um, that is something that is very real, right? And it can show up in relationships, it can show up in friendships, it can even show up in jobs. Like I remember there was one particular job that I was working where I was working with this company, and I remember it was like a huge company. It was like a really big deal. And I was like, so almost felt like that feeling of like, wow, I'm just so excited to be here. Like, I'm just glad to be here type of energy, which is a whole nother conversation because why do we feel like we're just happy to be in certain spaces? But we're not going to go there today. I'm going to try to stay focused. Hello. Oh, I just started like probably 10 minutes ago. So you're not late at all. Um, but yeah, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. So I won't get into that because so if somebody can remind me to write that down to remember that as a future topic. But yeah, I think that I remember I was at this job and I remember there was a situation where the person who was in leadership, who was um, spearheading this team that I was working on, she had a tendency of speaking in a way that made me feel disrespected. She had a tendency of being very condescending and not the best communicator in that space, at least just not the best communicator. And as a result, I remember feeling very like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about her. I don't know about this. And I remember like around the time when like we were having a review of some sort, I remember I was like, okay, I have to have a conversation about this if I'm going to stay on this team and continue to grow because I don't feel safe around this person. And not safe like physically, but I didn't feel safe like mentally. Like I felt like every little thing, if it was not done the way that they had anticipated, they would like kind of blow up about it. And I later found out that they had a whole lot of other things going on that was causing them to be this way, that they're actually not that type of person, but it was just showing up in that way because of probably because they didn't have balance, right? Probably because they were struggling to find balance. But nonetheless, I remember we needed to have that review conversation and I remember I literally was like shaking, like I could hear my voice cracking as I was speaking about the things that made me feel uncomfortable and really just asking for respect. But what I realized in that moment was that it was so deeply rooted into different things that I experienced as a child. So my work situation, my career at the time was triggering me and bringing up things from my childhood around speaking up for myself, around expressing my needs, around um, really advocating for like having a certain level of respect when I'm being spoken to. And like I mentioned before, it was like one of those situations where I felt so excited to be there that I was almost like afraid to speak up. I was afraid that if I spoke up, oh, like I'm gonna lose this opportunity type of thing. And that is like such a crazy space to be in. But what I learned from that was that when we're on these journeys of growth and self-care and healing, is that all of the relationships we're in with coworkers, family, even children, right? Relationships, they trigger us and continue our evolution of growth. That's how we continue to grow is through those different dynamics. Like if it's just us all the time by ourselves, we don't interact with anyone, we don't have any interpersonal relationships with anyone, we're not challenged to grow in any way. So that was an experience that I remember where I was like, okay, this is not just a relationship thing. This is a every space thing, every space where I'm interacting with other people. So finding balance, and I like I said, I would really like to change this title to harmony, because balance implies that like it's supposed to be just this equal thing, and I don't really know if that's how it works. I think my personal experience has taught me that it's not so much about finding balance as much as it is about finding harmony. And the difference between the two is like harmony is like this dance, right? Where it's just like you figure out what you need when you need it and you give yourself that. It's like this flow, right? It's not like this rigid, it always has to be even, because sometimes it just won't be that way. So, some things that I want to share around finding harmony, how you can find harmony in life and spirituality and through mindful consumption. I would say the first thing is to, if you don't already, is to develop some type of self-care practice for yourself. So comment below and let me know if you have a self-care practice, and maybe share a little bit about like what that looks like. Like what is a part of your self-care practice? So I'll share a little bit of my self-care practice as you all are responding to that. But my self-care practice, I've talked about this so many times on my podcast and even here on this channel, that like it is a dance, right? It's ever changing. It's not something that is rigid. It's not something that I'm like, okay, every day I have to spend 30 minutes doing my self-care routine in order to feel like I'm ready to start the day. Because again, sometimes life just doesn't work that way. Like life is going to continue to life whether or not we've done our self-care routine or not. And when I say self care, also, I want to clarify and say that I'm not referring to things like getting your nails done or like, getting your waxing or doing your hair. Like, those are more of like pampering, I guess I would say. So, for the sake of this question that I'm posing to you, if you have a self care routine, and if so, what does it look like? I'm speaking more so from a spiritual perspective. So, do you have a self care practice that you incorporate into your life on a daily basis to help you feel grounded, to help you move into your day with ease and to come into it from the best space possible, right? Now, some days my self care practice is an hour long, some days the whole day is self care, right? Other days, I don't do anything. And that's something that I actually want to stop doing, because I realize how off I feel when I don't do anything. But typically, some of the things that I like to do is, I love this response. Jewel says, taking the time out to stretch for at least 15 minutes in the morning. Love that. That's a big part of my self care practice as well. So, some of the things that I like to do first thing in the morning when I wake up is I like to pray. I like to journal. I try to do some type of stretching as well. Usually, I watch a video on YouTube and just do like a few yoga poses or some gentle stretches to kind of wake my body up. Something else that I like to do is go to the gym. Again, that's like I said I like to do. I don't like to do it. I don't even know why I told y'all that lie. I don't like to go to the gym, but it is a part of my self care practice, and I usually feel better when I go to the gym. Hi, T with T. Um, yeah, so like that's something that I do, and that's something that I also want to put a little like note in, is that although these things are called self care, they may not always feel good. Like going to the gym, it doesn't always feel good, but some I have to tell myself, think about how amazing you're going to feel afterwards, right? Like sometimes it's not about how it's going to make you feel in the moment. It's not about that instant gratification. Sometimes it's about how is it going to make you feel later in the day? How is it going to make you feel the next day? How is it going to make you feel the next week, right? Something like therapy, for example, that's a great example of something that's not, it's not an instant gratification thing. It's not something that as soon as you do it, you're going to feel great. Now, some people, I think like if you are the type of person that you like to talk things out in order to get clarity, it's very possible that like having a therapy session, you may walk away from it feeling like, okay, like, like, all right, I feel a little bit better. But I definitely wouldn't say that it's something that you go into with the intention of feeling better immediately. A lot of times, like I said about all relationships, right? Your relationship with your therapist is also a relationship. You may walk away from it feeling like, oh, wow. That was a lot. That was intense. A lot just came up. How do I feel about all that just came up? And something that I want to mention, I've talked about it a few times before, but I'm going to mention it again here because we're talking about therapy, is the tool and the app that I use and have used in the past to receive therapy. Is actually something called Faithful Counseling. I'm not sure if you have ever heard me talk about it before, but it's literally something that I was talking about this app paying my own coin way before like I had any type of affiliate brand connection with them. Like literally I found this app. I thought it was the coolest thing because it was like therapy, but you could find a therapist that had a background in faith. And because I'm a Christian, I wanted to work with somebody that had that perspective. Now, they do have different faith backgrounds. Like when you're filling out the submission form, it's not just Christian. You can say maybe you want someone that's Hindu, or you want someone that's Buddhist, or you want someone that is Islam, or Muslim. But like there's different options there. I want to put that out there as well. But, I think it's so cool how, like, a full circle moment after working with my therapist and paying for this app myself. And then years later, they reached out to me and said, hey, we would love to offer you a discount code if you share about your experience and tell people about the app. So I'm going to share in the comment section this link where if you are interested in working with a therapist, you can check it out. I'm curious to know how many people here are currently working with a therapist. And if so, like, do you find that experience to be like immediate gratification, like you feel better immediately, or do you walk away from it usually feeling like a bit reflective and kind of like, you know, with like if I could, I wish I could like insert a meme of how I look after most of my therapy sessions. I'm usually in shambles. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm usually in shambles. I'm usually crying. If I'm not crying afterwards, I'm usually crying during the session. Like it's rare that I walk out of therapy just like, feeling good, feeling great. Like, no, that usually comes maybe a little later, like after I've kind of taken time to process it, taking time to like really feel what I'm feeling. But oftentimes I don't have that experience. And I'm curious to know if anyone else has that experience. So that's the first point about having a self care practice. I think that is one of the main things, right? One of the other things that I would mention around finding balance is when it comes to consumption of content, social media, and also consumption of like what we're physically taking into our body. So, not just what we're seeing through our eyes, what we're listening to, what we're eating, what we're drinking, like all of those things really do play in finding that sense of harmony, right? Finding that sense of harmony in ourselves between our lives. Probably because, like, look, I like a glass of wine. I like a margarita here or there, right? But how do you enjoy those things and still create this sense of balance within yourself? I think that's where mindfulness comes in, right? So being mindful of why you're doing what you're doing before you do it, right? I've talked about this so many times on my podcast around emotional eating, right? Emotional eating is a very real thing. It's a very real thing. And if you've never heard of it before, I'll give like a 30-second explanation of emotional eating. So it's basically when you're feeling maybe overwhelmed or anxious or any type of emotion that's making you feel uncomfortable. And instead of kind of processing that emotion, your go to response is to grab food or something to drink or something to kind of take your mind off of it, right? Now, I said emotional eating, but emotional consumption in general is something that a lot of us are probably guilty of. Like, I'm sure if we're being honest, all of us can probably raise our hand and say that we've done that before, where we've maybe binge watched a show instead of doing an assignment because we felt overwhelmed, or maybe we decided to eat a whole box of cookies instead of doing that thing that's actually making us feel really anxious, or having that conversation with the person that has been making us feel really anxious, right? Like Those are all forms of emotional consumption, right? And the antidote to that is to be more mindful, is to check in with yourself before you make those decisions, before, and also pause. I just thought of something else as of a emotional consumption, sex as well, right? Like, if we're being honest, when you think about the whole rebound situation, right, and situationships, a lot of times, right, a lot of times when people are engaging in those type of behaviors, it can be linked to some type of avoidance. It can be linked to some type of um, distraction. Like, there's something that you are distracting yourself from. So this feels like an easier solution to just kind of keep your mind off of it, right? So in order to kind of counteract those things, it's about, before you make a decision, before you decide to do whatever your vice of choice is, whatever the thing is that you go to when you're feeling overwhelmed, before you do that, taking a moment to be mindful, taking a moment to be present, taking a moment to, even if it's just literally a minute, a minute of just closing your eyes, taking a few deep breaths, acknowledging the emotion that you're feeling. And if you can't find the emotion first, find what you feel in your body. So that's something, that a technique that my therapist actually taught me, which was, find where do you feel the emotion in your body? Because sometimes we can't name it. We don't know what we feel. We just know that we feel tension in our shoulders, or maybe our stomach is hurting, like we have like butterflies in our stomach or knots in our stomach. Or maybe you feel just like this headache right here, right? So identify what you feel physically. And then, if you can, identify what emotion is present for you. So, are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling lonely? Because that's a big one, especially when it comes to situationships and um, sex and all of that. That's a really big part of it. And a lot of times there's a link to that. So, just checking in with yourself, right? And then once you've done that, check in with yourself, you're like, okay, I could do this, the thing that's going to provide me with comfort, gratification, or I can do this, right? And that's where the self care practices are helpful. Having self care practices that you lean on, not just for your morning routine, but things that are like almost like your emergency kit, right? Like, we have a first aid kit for if we get sick or if we get injured. Having like a self care first aid kit ready in those moments where you feel triggered, in those moments where you feel emotional, when you feel lonely, when you feel sad, when you feel depressed, when you feel anxious, having like that self care emergency kit, first aid kit on standby, where you can just say, okay, what are the things that I can do right now in this moment that would make me feel better, that will not contribute to me feeling worse in the long run, right? So something like having sex with somebody might make you feel better in the moment, but it might make you feel like trash the next day. Or deciding that you're going to go out and turn up. It might make you feel better in the moment, but you may not feel the best about it the next day, right? Or if you are someone that uses drugs, or if you're someone that overeats, right? Like, really thinking about those things and saying, okay, I have this option, which is what I always do, which is what always brings me some type of comfort, or I have the things in my emergency first aid kit, right? And for me, I'll share what some of my emergency first aid self-care kit items are, right? So for me, one of those things is water, immersing myself in water. So taking a shower or taking a bath, preferably a bath, but even if I can't do a bath, if I feel like I don't have the time or the energy, getting in the shower. Another form of water is crying. And I know that may sound weird to some people, but our tears really do have the ability to heal. And oftentimes, when we're holding all these emotions in our bodies, tears can allow us to not only just release those tears, but it can also help us to release the tension that we feel in our body as a result of the unexpressed emotion, right? So, tears, allowing yourself to cry. And allowing yourself to cry can look different for everyone. For me, like, sometimes like I will literally feel like, okay, I know that I need to cry. I can just feel it. It's just something right there that's just like it just needs to come out, but I can't get to it. Like I feel like I can't access it sometimes. So I'll just watch something that I know is gonna make me cry. Like one of my favorite cheesy movies, like Beyond the Lights, is one that always makes me cry. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that movie, but it's so cheesy, but it makes me cry all the time, right? Or I watch like not anything that's like sad, like heartbreaking sad, but like just sad enough that it'll just put me in a space like, and even the funny thing is I'm thinking about this, I'm like, when you need to cry, like it sometimes it don't even matter what you're watching. Like there's been times where I've cried off of stuff where it's like, why are you crying? Why are you crying watching The Circle? Like, why? But it's like, I needed that, So allow yourself that in those moments when you feel it, allow yourself to express that. Allow yourself to release that if it comes up to the surface. Another thing that is in my emergency self care toolkit is I would say people, right? So a support system, people that I rely on where it's just like, look, I'm having a moment. Can I vent? Can we pray? Right? Can we talk? Having like that support system of people that you can reach out to. And again, a therapist might fall into that, right? So if you feel like you're the type of person where you're like, man, I wish I had people that I could talk to and pray with. I don't have that. A therapist is a great place to seek that support. And what I like about, the different apps and like the app Faithful Counseling is that you can text message them. Like you can send them messages through the app. So even if you don't have an appointment set up, but you feel like you need some urgent support, that's an option, right? Um, and then the last thing that I would say on my emergency um, first aid self care toolkit is, and also let me know if this is resonating with you guys because I see you're kind of quiet today, but I just want to know it's resonating. This is making sense. Um, but something else, like the last thing that I would say that is non negotiable for me is prayer, praise and worship. So last week, if you missed the live stream, we actually did a live prayer and meditation. I would highly recommend going and checking it out. But prayer, praise, and worship, and prayer, adding into that for me is like non negotiable. It's like when my spirit is feeling heavy, when I'm feeling any type of emotion, overwhelmed, sad, depressed, whatever it is, I know that is almost like putting a band-aid on a cut. Like it's going to stop the bleeding. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to fix the problem or it's going to completely eliminate the problem, but it is going to stop the bleeding. It's going to give me some space where I can begin to just like breathe for a second and then I can reassess what I need from there, right? So for me, what that looks like is having a playlist always available that I can go to. Like, and I'll actually drop the link in the chat to my Spotify playlist. Um, that is praise and worship. And like, if I'm in a space, I just turn this on. And it's like, uh, if I'm being honest, all week I've been in the space and I've just been turning, like, I'll just wake up and I'll just be like, okay, let me just turn on my music because sometimes we don't even have the words or the energy to like find what's going on. We just need relief. We just need relief. And if that is a space that you're in, music, right? Mindful consumption, the music that we listen to has a huge impact on our mood, on our emotions. So we have to be careful what we are consuming. Now, I'm not the social media, music, TV police. Like those days are over for me. I'm not about to hit you with all this religion and tell you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. Do what you want to do. But I'm just going to say that it makes a difference what you consume. It makes a difference. I feel a difference personally, only speaking for myself. I feel a difference when I wake up and I listen to praise and worship first thing in the morning, or I wake up and I decide, oh, let me just go to the gym and I throw on Megan Thee Stallion first thing in the morning. It's two completely different energies happening. And it comes at you quick and it gets into your spirit quick. So just being mindful and even thinking about that, there's a huge difference in how you may feel if you hop on social media first thing in the morning versus if you read the Bible app or read your Bible first thing in the morning, right? Like it can create completely different shifts and moods for your day. So just being mindful of like, how are you starting your day? Like that's just a simple question you can ask yourself. How do you want to start today? How do you want to move into today? I always joke and say like some days, you choose violence. Some days you choose peace. It's my intention to choose peace every day, but some days I don't. Some days I wake up and I don't choose peace. I don't listen to praise and worship. I don't do my self care routine. I don't journal. I don't meditate. To me, that's choosing violence because I know that if let my feet hit the ground and I have not spent time with God and spent time with myself, I've already set my day up to be chaotic in truth. So, those are my tips for today. That's what I wanted to share around mindful consumption and around just finding that harmony. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you all got something out of this. And I want to close, unless there's any questions or comments. I want to close this conversation with a short mindful practice. Similar to the way I brought it in using my singing bowl. I'm going to be playing this for a few minutes, and I invite you to just sit, listen, take it in, or not. And yeah, that's it. That's all I have today. Short and sweet. All right. If any questions or comments come in, I'll read them at the end of this. And just take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Again, deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And one last deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And I just want to remind you that in order to find harmony and a sense of balance in our lives, it's important that we prioritize filling our own cup first. When we prioritize taking care of ourselves, learning about ourselves, investing in different tools and professionals that can help us heal ourselves, we create space to love, we create space to be in relationship, and we find harmony and we find ease and grace and self compassion and showing up even in the moments when we don't feel like it, even in the moments where life feels overwhelming. So, I want to say thank you again for joining this live conversation. We'll be back on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Um, I hope to see you in the next one. And the last thing that I will mention is that if anyone is interested in learning about any of the offerings that I provide outside of, doing these sessions and doing the live meditations and all of that jazz, you can click the link that I just dropped in the chat. You can also connect with me on Instagram. But I offer one to one meditation sessions, I offer one to one breathwork sessions, and I also offer clarity coaching. So if you're interested in either of those things, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We can set up a discovery call where you can learn about what is included in those conversations. You can learn about what the benefits are of working together, and we can decide if we're a good fit. So, with that being said, I don't see any questions or comments. I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you next week.